get blinded, and then I'll have to get up and put my boob in the camera and get the blind.
It's okay. It's so fun.
Are we?
It says we're live.
I am not even seeing chats or anything, so let me see.
Oh, there's somebody. Oh, that's you.
Hi.
That's so
okay,
funny.
so it's going to take me a second to figure this out. I'm trying to find the chat. It's a private chat. I don't want a private chat. I want to be able to talk to everybody. If you guys are watching, if you can see this, go ahead and say hey, and hopefully my chat will pop up so I can see.
Yeah, on my screen, there's a chat on the side that I see. I think private chat is between you and I, and then there's stuff on the
so
side.
If we
over
talk
there.
shit, we just go, I'm kidding.
Right, exactly.
I
But I don't see like a count. I don't see any viewers or anything like that. Hello, Mary. Hi, Patty.
Hi, ladies. Okay.
Hello.
So we have 9. We have 9. Welcome. All right, you guys. I think this is going to be so much fun. These are my Patreon girls too.
Hi, ladies. Welcome in. I'm very excited to be here with you guys.
Hi.
Yay! Happy day.
Oh my gosh, you guys. Hi, Amy. Hi, Michelle. Patty. Helly.
Hello.
You guys, look who I have.
Tanya, hello. Look. Rachel. Hi, Rachel.
Rachel. So I don't see her. She must be following on your channel. That's funny.
She's on here as Rachel Thomas. It doesn't say Rachel. Rachel, but...
Oh, that is Rochelle.
Oh, Rochelle.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
I thought Rachel spelled her name exactly
I gave
the
her
same
shit.
way.
I told her.
And her last name is Thompson, isn't it? Or Thomas? Something very similar to that. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay.
So Rochelle is actually a really good friend of mine. And she does spell it wrong. I told her.
No, I just think it's funny. I thought she was Ricky Rachel. Awesome. That's okay. Maybe she's an undercover.
Maybe she is and she didn't tell me.
Amy Short, hello. I am so excited to be here with you guys. And while we're waiting for people to join, I'm going to just let you guys know. I just did an afternoon Schumann update because the graph looks weird, you guys. There's something going on. I have no insight into, excuse me, specifically what it is. But it looks like a dark spot on the graph. When you look at the graph, there are green horizontal lines that show up. That is background noise that we, excuse me one second.
Are we freezing? We might be freezing a little bit. Oh, she watched it.
There we go. Those vertical green lines are background noise that we as humanity make. It is microwaves, radio waves, all the stuff that's in the air. They are gone. They are missing, and they have been missing off the graph for the last 5 hours. I checked. The graph is up to date. I checked the Italian graph. There's nothing going on over there. I do know that there was a big earthquake in Alaska. I know there's a lot of strange weather going on today. There's actually even a fire in Area 51. Did you guys hear that?
I personally did. Did anybody else see that? But it's not being talked about. Is that correct?
Right. Well, I mean, it depends on who you are listening to, right? Mainstream media is not covering it all. So I don't know. There's so much going on that I don't even know anymore. I feel like my bingo card is so full. I had to turn it over. Like, what's my prize? I got bingo like 5 times, you know?
I just made a note about the Italian graph. Does that usually differ from the graph you typically look at?
They do. So they measure different frequencies. The Russian graph, the one I use the most often, that measures extremely low frequency. And the Italian graph measures ultra low frequency. And it sounds very scientific with extremely and ultra, but they're different wavelengths. So when I'm looking at the two graphs, the Russian graph is incoming energy. The Italian graph is outgoing energy, release energy. So when we see red on the Italian graph, it usually matches up with some sort of red demonstration on the Russian graph. And that tells me this is release energy because it's being released from the earth. Then we have the white energy coming in that's coming from the sun, space, all the things out there. That's incoming energy. So that's kind of where we differentiate. The new pattern that's been showing up on the graph of the red release in the upper chakras with no release on the Italian graph is new, relatively new. And for me in meditation, I was shown that this is the push. This is the push to get us to let go of the things that are holding us back from our connection to our source, whatever that may look like for you. So all the insecurities, all the concerns, all the embarrassment, all the hiding and masking and all that stuff, we're getting a lot of pushes on that to let that go. Yes, because I do believe that we're stepping into some new frequency. The earth itself is evolving and we are evolving with her. And these are part of the growing pains, you know, it's just part of
that's what excited me about with your content, because you do have a scientific background. So you kind of marry the metaphysical and the science. And I think that is so powerful, especially for people who think, oh, it's just woo woo. Like when I tell people during sessions, like, you need to listen to Schumann resonance because I believe fully that it's affecting things that are going on for you. And then they'll be like, thinking it's bullshit. I'm like, wait a second, it's actually studied by NASA. So, and then I always send them to you. Go see Erin.
Well, there's a phrase that I heard, and I wish I could remember who said it, but I heard it a long time ago when I was getting my undergraduate degree. And whoever said it, they said, everything is always science fiction until it's not. Just think about watching Back to the Future. Marty McFly got fired over FaceTime. And here we are on FaceTime, right? And when that came out in that movie, people were like, I can remember my own dad saying, I would never do that. That is ridiculous to see somebody like this. Why do I have to do that? Just like he told me he would never have a cell phone. If somebody needs to reach him, they can reach him when he's at home, yet he had a cell phone. You know what I'm saying? Everything is always science fiction only until it's not. And there's a reason that this comes up in our entertainment first, because that's where we have less resistance to the idea of it. Science is very, very resistant to change. It just is. It's the nature of the beast. Imagination, entertainment is not. And so these ideas filter into our consciousness first through things we don't have as much resistance to. Then somebody sees that, gets an idea, and starts building from that, right? So this is kind of how all of that works together. And you will see patterns of that throughout your history when you look back at things.
And we're all connected. So one is feeding the next. So I have a theory. And since you brought up entertainment, I want to see what you think about this. So you ever watch The Simpsons and hear how everybody says, oh my God, they predicted all these things that are happening? Like they didn't predict.
I have heard it. I haven't watched much of The Simpsons, to be honest, but I know what you're talking about.
Think that people think that The Simpsons has predicted everything. I believe that it's been created because of, oh, I watched this and all these people are watching it and then they're putting in that energy. So I think it's something that's actually being created.
Well, that's momentum, right? I mean, that lines up with law of attraction and momentum, which again is not woo-woo, it's just resonance. That's all it is.
But if we can't put our fingers on it, it's really hard for some people to comprehend or to grasp. I just today went to a venue that I'm going to be doing an event at on Monday. And one of the people that's going to be there cooking for the event, is pretty sure I'm full of shit. So, but it's something that unless you put a finger on it or you see it, that it's kind of hard to believe. So that's why I really like that you have that scientific background where you can go, this.
Yeah, I am a scientist by nature. I have always been curious. I have always loved research. When you used to get assigned a research paper in college and everybody's like, oh God, I'm like, how fun. I love research. I love research. I love to learn. I'm a lifelong student. I stay in school. I don't ever finish. I'm currently just taking a single class right now from Harvard, just learning things so that I can learn them.
That's fabulous.
I mean, I feel like I don't want my brain
Yeah.
to be idle. I want to continue to expand
Yeah.
and grow. And when I went through my awakening experience, as I started to reestablish myself, because I felt like everything blew up, I started to recognize that if mainstream science and metaphysical science would just have a
Yes.
conversation, we could get so much more
Right.
done, you know,
Right.
because one explains the other. And we are getting very, very close to something called a theory of everything, which is something Einstein was working on, something that rectifies traditional physics and quantum physics. There's a missing chunk
Okay.
in the middle, and it's mathematical in nature. But if they can figure out that chunk, it will explain our whole existence, from the teeny tiny strings inside of quarks all the way up to planetary movements and universal movements. And there's a guy, his last name is Hawkins. I can't think of his first name, but he has a theory. It's called the Hawking's omniversal theory. It's
Uh-huh.
HOT for short. And he has the math to finish this equation. And he talks about black holes, and he talks about energy and bilocation and all this stuff. This is a trained scientist who has done the math and got the paper, and he's gaining
Wow.
traction in the
They're not
field because
laughing
he's
him
not
out
just
of
saying, they're
that's
not,
fabulous.
because he's putting it up for peer review. He's saying, here, take my work, prove me wrong, and they can't. So it's just starting to sort of bubble under
Okay,
the
I'll look him up.
surface. And I've been really following this guy. I believe he's actually in Chicago, because every time I see one of his videos or posts, the location is Illinois,
Oh, okay.
Chicago area. And Northwestern is here in Illinois, Chicago area. It's a fantastic school for physics and science and that sort of stuff. So I kind of wonder if maybe he's there. Hi, Julia. So we are getting closer and closer and closer to this idea of understanding how our world works, from the teeny tiniest particle possible to the largest
Oh,
body
let's see.
possible.
This is fast. Okay, so now I have another one that just popped into my head. Timeline collapses. How do you feel about
Yeah.
those?
So I think that they're
Yeah.
definitely things. So the way I understand it is there are multiple kinds of timelines. We as individuals
Mhm.
have our own timelines, and you change timelines thousands and thousands of times per day. You are a projector. You are projecting out. So you kind of have to think about it like a room full of film
Yeah.
strips, right? Wherever your projector is pointed is what you are going to see on the wall. That is your timeline. Then there's collective timelines. We are a
Yes.
species, so we share a collective
Yes.
focus, right? This is what our society is. That takes longer to change because it's more people involved, and momentum is really strong with a lot of
Boy, right
people, right?
now.
That Right, exactly. And then that timeline is further divided now between the awakened and the unawakened collective. And we hear Bashar talk about this
Yes.
all the time, that these timelines have been slowly pulling apart. And he describes it like glass walls. Just because you aren't in that timeline doesn't mean you can't
Yes.
see it, right? And the way I explain it to people, visualize it this way. If you have a very good friend that lives in another state, if you called them up and asked them, "Do you know what's happening in my neighborhood?" They would have no idea. It's like being in another
Yeah.
timeline, right? But if you tell them about it, now they're aware it is part of
Yes.
their timeline. That's
Yeah.
kind of how that works, at least the
Yeah.
way
And
I
I think that makes
understand it.
perfect sense. When like so for those watching, psychic is actually the Greek word for soul. So when somebody tells you they're psychic, it's not this woo woo, they're going to wear, all the flowy black, although I do sometimes wear flowy, staring at a crystal ball kind of energy. Psychic is the Greek word for soul. And what that means is they have the ability to tap into your soul's journey, your soul's energy, and what's going on, what's been going on. And sometimes people come and they want us to read the future. I don't really do that myself. I don't really see myself.
No, and I don't I yeah, and I say that a lot too, but I want people to understand it's impossible to predict their future. It is impossible. You can talk about probability, you can talk about momentum, but at any point in time, anyone has free will to make a
100%.
decision at the drop of a hat, and it will take a left turn We have free will. There is no way to predict the future. You can talk about, when I look at people, when I do readings for people, I'm not seeing their future. I see
Oh,
probabilities.
that's interesting.
I see stronger probability over here
Yeah.
than over here. For me, what it visually looks like is, if I'm reading for you, I see you, Melissa, sitting in the middle of like a half moon table, right? And you have all these threads coming out from you. These threads are
Yes.
possibilities. And depending on how many of them are vibrating, in if they're clumped up or spread out, that gives me an idea of where your focus is. And I can hone in on that and kind of pull information forward with that. But there's no way to predict the future. And part of the reason that I really am resistant to doing like love
Yeah.
readings for people is because I don't want to meddle in your love life, because there is nothing that I can tell you in this reading with you that is not going to change a behavior that you would have after this reading. Your love life
Yeah.
is your
Yeah.
business, and I do not need to be part of that,
Yeah, those are probably not my most favorite. I don't necessarily do readings like that. I don't have, oh well, let's look at your love life. My specialty, I kind of am really good about honing in on trauma. I'm like, let's pop that pimple. And I
Yeah.
just, sorry, people. But here's where we're going. But I will tell you, I
Yeah.
did have an experience with somebody who came to me, and I had done a few readings for her over the years, and she was getting ready to move. And I clearly saw acreage. I saw a farm. I saw four-wheelers. I saw all the things. And she was like, that's really not what we're looking for. And her dad ends up coming to one of my events, and he's like, Melissa, they live on a farm. They have I mean, he was so just everything just kind of nailed. Um, and so, but I typically don't do that either, just for the record. But it was something that was so incredibly
No.
clear that it was just like, bam, this is what this, some people say, well, maybe she manifested it because you put that in her energy. So there's always that.
There's always that argument. There's always going to be that argument, right? People
Yeah.
say with Reiki, how do you know it's not placebo? Well, here's my answer. Does it matter? Does it matter? If you feel
We
better,
have some
does it
Reiki
matter?
practitioners on
It
here,
doesn't
so
matter.
I love that
I
they.
fully believe in Reiki, 100%. But
Yes.
when people want to argue with me about it, my answer to them is, if it helps you, does it matter? Because you feel better. Stop trying to dissect it and just allow it to help you.
Yeah.
And through allowing that to come through and not getting so tangled up in this tiny, minute details, you never know what your mind is going to open to. You never know what that personal experience will allow you to finally say, oh, maybe there is something to this. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And other people's energy can absolutely affect us. And it does every day.
Of course
Ask
it
any
does.
empath out there. Walk into
Of
a
course it does.
room it's amazing. And
Well,
and
the
I
visual, I'm so sorry. I don't mean
no,
to cut
go,
you
go.
off. I do that a lot. So please correct me if
No,
I am.
you're
I don't
good.
mean to.
You're
Okay.
so good.
But something that I was given once in meditation about that is, you have to remember that the human perception scale is itty bitty teeny tiny. There's a huge visual light spectrum that we can only see about this much of.
Yeah.
And we are walking around in this soup of different frequencies and like all kinds of things. Like, think about Wi-Fi. It's literally everywhere. Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. But we are physically vibrational beings walking through a vibrational atmosphere. It would be illogical to think that two vibrations bumping up against each other would have no impact. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen in science. It doesn't happen in woo-woo. It doesn't happen anywhere. That is just how it works. That is part of what resonance is, or dissonance is.
Dissonance.
When you
Yep.
don't like the thing that you are matching up with, you feel the dissonance. When you are aligned with it, you feel the resonance. That's the difference, right?
Yeah, I love that.
But it's everywhere. You're walking around in a soup of frequency.
Yeah, a soup of goo.
Sometimes, yeah.
Dude. Well, lately, the last few years, it's been a soup of goo.
It has definitely not felt as yummy as it has in the past, but I also understand that, let me think of the best way to put this. We as a society, as human beings, not necessarily just Americans, but the world in general, have so much momentum going in one direction that there is no gentle way to reverse course. Think about your
Nor
friends
should
and
we.
family. Right. Think about your friends and family who are so dug in on what they believe that nothing you say is going to change their mind. It's going to take a massive act to bring forward more openness, more
Yeah.
willingness to communicate. It has to get the discomfort that you feel has to get so bad that you're willing to risk the discomfort you don't know to get outside of that. That's where the point is. And that's literally where we are as a society, as a species right now. We're right at that tipping point.
The precipice, absolutely. We get so comfortable with our own pain. I see it all the time. It's hard for us to change because we know this. We know what this
Right.
feels like, but I don't know what that feels like, so I'm not going to taste that.
Right. Right. And, complacency is a killer. And you
Yeah.
also don't know how sick you are till you're not sick anymore. Anyone who's
Right.
had a chronic illness will tell you that. I had a chronic illness for years and it became normal.
Yeah.
So when it was gone, I almost didn't know what that was anymore. Like, oh, this is what you're supposed to feel like? This is normal? Like I had a completely different idea of what
And
normal
you
is.
were
It's based on your experience.
and you were really sick.
Yeah, I was really
That
sick.
was part of your awakening, am I correct?
Yes, it
Are you
was.
are you comfortable sharing any of
Yeah,
that?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, my awakening, was kind of a couple years in the making, like, I was diagnosed with this blood clotting disorder as a result of having several clots of unknown origin, in, like, 2018. This disease is fatal. It can be fatal, and it has to be treated very aggressively, and so you can imagine when you are diagnosed with something like that, your world changes. And I lived in a lot of fear, and mainly because the doctor I was seeing was telling me things like, "Oh, don't go on a roller coaster because if you hit yourself, you might get a clot," and just all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to 2020, and COVID hit, right? And my doctor had scared me to death because he said COVID causes clots. So if you get COVID, it's going to kill you. So I had become a recluse. Plus, we couldn't teach at the university during COVID.
Right.
And I'm sitting at home one day and I was bored and I thought, you know what? I have access to one of the best medical libraries in the entire country and I have never used it to look up my own disease. So I'm bored. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
So I started researching it. I got in there and I started looking at the studies and all this sort of stuff. And I noticed that there was a test that is required. It's a protocol for diagnosis that I had not had. As a nurse, I know my medical records. I have copies. I know exactly everything that's being done. I look at my own test results, all that stuff. I knew I hadn't had this done. And according to everything that I read, it said, in order to be diagnosed, you must have this test. So I also found, coincidentally, at the same time, that the doctor who discovered this disorder was still alive and still teaching in England. And I figured this is really interesting. So I'm just going to email him and see what happens. What do I have to lose? If he doesn't answer, I still am in the same place. But he's the person who discovered the disease. So if anyone's going to be knowledgeable about it, it's going to be this guy. So I emailed Dr. Hughes and I just very simply said, "Hello, I've been diagnosed with this disorder. I noticed in my test results I've not had this test before. As the expert on this disease, is your opinion that I should continue treatment or would you suggest getting a second opinion?" Not asking him to diagnose, just
Right.
sort of weigh in on my treatment plan. And he got back to me. He actually emailed me back to my great surprise. And he told me, he said, "You need to get a second opinion, get a second opinion." So I printed all that out and took it into my specialist. And my specialist looked me in my eyes and said, "I'm the expert. You listen to me. If you don't want to do what I say, blah, blah, blah." And as someone who was teaching at a medical school, I thought, "Oh, no, 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 we're not doing this."
Right.
So I left his office, got all my records. I went to my primary care doctor, who had always been very nice and kind, and explained the situation. And he sat down with me and we looked through all my records and couldn't find the test. And he said, "All right, well, just so that you feel better and I feel better, let's order it. I'm pretty sure it's going to be fine. No big deal. Let's just order it." Ordered the test. He called me the next morning at 6 a.m. and he said, "You need to discontinue your medication immediately. You need to come to my office right now. You do not have this disorder. You're taking a medication that we do not know how it will affect you. And I need to run a lot of tests." And in that moment, everything I had given full credence to completely collapsed around me because I had allowed myself to build science and medicine up in my mind as unfallible. All the answers, everything is there. Trust, trust, trust. Even as a nurse, trust, trust, trust. And suddenly I found out that this had lied to me. And for 2 years, I'd been taking this medication that might be killing me now,
Devastating.
very much. And for someone who was so strongly rooted in science, everything, I had a total mental collapse. I couldn't have a conversation. I don't think I got out of bed for several days. I just was going over in my head, like, how could this happen? How could this happen? And my daughter, as sweet as she is, she came in my room and she said, "Mom, have you ever tried meditation?" I'm like, "That's ridiculous. Get out of here." And she just was like, "Well, I'm just doing nothing else is working, so maybe you should try it." And I was like, "Oh,
I like her.
So yeah, she's really sweet. And at that time I was so desperate. I was like, fine. And I have such a busy mind that in order to get myself to meditate, I have a big bathroom with a walk-in closet off of it. I went in the bathroom, turned off the light and shut the door, went in the closet, turned off the light and shut the door, put on a blindfold, and then sat in that closet because I was so overstimulated.
Oh my gosh.
And I put on my headphones, and I don't even know what I turned on. No idea what I turned on. And suddenly my whole world cracked open. I was having visuals, I was hearing things, my whole body was hot and pouring heat out of it. There are no words to quantify what that was like. But that was it pretty much. After that, I was like, holy cow, there's something going on here,
Yeah. And your world just got shook upside down, like literally.
It completely did a 180, completely.
Yeah. And then you started looking for answers.
I did. I started looking for answers. And what I got frustrated with is, as I'm a very practical person, I want to know the answer to the question. I don't want to read 600 pages to find a 3-sentence answer, right? And what I found in my awakening experience is I wanted to learn about specific topics, manifestation or whatever it is. I would buy a book, read the whole stinking book, and still not have the answer to the question I had. And that was incredibly frustrating. So in order to fill the gap that I could not find the answer to, I did my own research, and I just started pulling together information. And very slowly over time, I would write this all out, and very slowly over time, I ended up with a 650-page spiritual reference book.
Yeah,
that
that's
is
fabulous.
it's like an encyclopedia. You can open the book and turn to page whatever. This is about quantum physics and metaphysics and how they work together. Go to this page, you read that. And then from there, I was kind of like, well, what do I do with this? Right? Like, I'm a teacher at heart. I've always been a teacher. So I started putting classes together and using this as my textbook. And now on my Patreon, when you go on my Patreon in the shop, all of those PDFs are chapters out of that book.
Okay, that's fabulous. So for those of you who are interested, I'll share, or you can, do you have access to the chat?
I can see it, but I can't add anything to it.
Do you want me to? Do you know so I don't have mine memorized. Do you have yours?
It's just Consciously Erin. I'm Consciously Erin across all platforms. Anything I'm on, if you just type in Consciously Erin, you should find me. Or if you go to my website, which is consciouslyerin.com, I think there's a direct link from there. I'm going to shut this blind because it keeps blinding me.
Okay.
And adjust my light a little bit. Sorry.
Nope, all good. I already told you I was afraid I would have to put my boob in the camera, so I'm glad you did instead.
Well, that's a little bit better.
Okay. All right. I already warned Erin about my cussing, just so you guys know.
I cuss too. I just, I don't all the time, but my husband always says, when you're serious because you start cussing. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. That's when I'm ready. That's when I mean business.
I mean it. Rochelle says she follows you on Patreon also.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm a teacher at heart, and my goal is to be the bridge between physical and metaphysical science, because they are not mutually exclusive. They work together.
They should, and they can. Absolutely.
Yeah, all we have to do is open our perspective. Science, as a scientist, I say all the time, science is very arrogant. It thinks it knows everything. And if you've ever had a conversation with an older doctor, you know that.
Yes. Yeah.
You
Yes.
know?
Their bedside manner.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. The one thing I will say about that, though, just as a side note, I was teaching at a university medical school, right? And right before I left, what I noticed with the incoming class of students is these students were the ones asking, when is it appropriate to suggest acupuncture? When is it appropriate to suggest meditation? When is it appropriate to suggest somatic stretches rather than physical therapy? They were starting to really answer the question. And it's really interesting to me that it was like 3 years after COVID, right? So these kids that were coming, they're adults, but these first year medical students coming in had just spent the last 3 years in isolation, and they were all looking for a way to connect to something bigger. Every student I interacted with. So I feel like our medicine is on the tide. It's starting to turn. These generations that are coming forward are bringing bigger ideas, more openness, more willingness to discuss things.
I'm sorry.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yep. Tanya.
Exactly.
Cussing is great. Cussing is great.
Cussing is great.
Get your point across. Okay. So you had, I would say you got like the quick start into the metaphysical because that wasn't your world prior. And so 2020, that's only been 5 years. So that's kind of like you're on the advanced track. Go.
Right. And people, you don't recognize that when you're in the middle of it. It's only in hindsight. It's only in hindsight that you can look back and go, holy cow, look how much my life has changed, because you're in the middle of it. 100%. You can't see that. And so many people will come to me and have a session with me and they feel very frustrated. Nothing's changing. Nothing's changing. I promise you it's changing. It just takes time. We live in a physical world. It has laws that must be followed, both physical laws and societal laws. There are things that have to fit into there. And if you're bringing something from the 5D to the 3D, it's got to really compress itself quite a bit to get down here. So things have to change. You have to be patient. It is changing. It just takes time. I didn't get here overnight, but looking back, it felt like it was overnight.
Yeah,
now,
when you look back to see, so mine has just been since about 20. I started to wake up around 2006, but it wasn't until my son took his life in 2010, and that really is what catapulted my mediumship. I didn't look for it, but I thought I was losing my shit. So I started hearing things, feeling things. So, and I remember when I was in the midst of building myself and learning and understanding and trying to figure it all out, it felt like it was dragging. It was going so slow. But now when I look back, I'm like, 10 years gone. Just, dude, that's crazy.
And for me, that really speaks to the dualistic nature of our universe, right? We are in a dualistic universe. This is why we have karma. Not because karma is here to teach you a lesson, but karma is about balance. It's about balance.
You're preaching,
right? And so something to remember is if your physical universe is very structured, it's very defined, it has hard goals, it's show me the proof and then I'll believe you. All that is your physical universe. Because we live in a dualistic natured universe, your metaphysical universe is 180 degrees different from that. So what that means is nothing has a clear definition. There are no hard, fast goals. It's believe it and then I'll show you. It's completely opposite. And that's where the balance comes in.
Yeah. Well, I just had that conversation, I think a few days ago on my own Patreon was don't see it to believe it and you'll see it. Believe it and you'll see it.
Yes,
so we always want like, well, I'll believe it once I see it. Well, you might not ever see it.
Right, exactly. Because law of attraction is real. It's very
real. I love
real.
that you talk about karma being a balancer because that is one of my pet peeves is hearing people say karma's going to get you. That is not karma.
Right.
That is not karma.
I know she gets called a bitch all the time. She's so nice. So here's the story that I use. Here's the story that I use to sort of demonstrate karma, right? Let's say you and I have incarnated together and you take my life for whatever reason, right? What that shows is a complete disregard for the value of my life. We reincarnate together and I do that to you. Now we have the same karma. Nothing has been solved. So instead, we would reincarnate together and you would take on a role that would require you to unconditionally care for me, a parent, a lover, a child, something to that effect. And that is where you find the balance in that action.
So that was one
right?
of the things with my son. My son took his life, as I said. And one of the things that I am understanding through his contact is that because he committed suicide, now in our next life, which I already know is happening now, another conversation, but he may have to be a caregiver for somebody who is going through that, or he may incarnate to be a counselor or a therapist, but somebody who's he's going to have to understand that he's not being punished. And I tell people I've never seen hell. I've done 4,000 plus readings. I've never seen hell. I've seen lots of love and lots of support for the soul,
Yeah.
but never a place where anybody is punished.
No. And throughout my life, I've tried multiple religions for seeking reasons. And the one that I was a part of most recently, which was 20 years ago, was the Baha'i religion. And not a lot of people have heard of that, but it's actually quite beautiful. They do not seek you out. They do not evangelize. They do not do anything like that because they are believers that if they have the truth you need, you'll find them.
100%.
And they are very accepting of everyone. They teach from all the books of the major religions, not just one, because they believe that at its core, most major religions are trying to teach the same thing. It's just the bureaucratic bullshit that you have to get
Indoctrination.
Right?
Yeah.
So they keep Right. So they teach from their books, but they do something called firesides instead of church. You meet at someone's house and you have a discussion, a Socratic, where you sit in a circle and you talk about the topic and everybody gets a say, right? So that's how they work. But once I was at a meeting and someone said, well, what is hell? And the way the person explained it was they said, well, if you think of God or source as warm, loving, accepting light, then hell is distance from that. And that can be on earth, it can be in your mind, it can be anywhere. And it only happens as a result of your choices because you removed yourself from the light. And it's always there and it's always calling you, but you still have the choice. And I thought that was such a beautiful and eloquent description of what that feels like. Hell can be exactly where you are right now if you have made choices to line your life like a flip. You know what I mean? Getting
Yeah,
tongue-tied, but you know
I
what I'm
got you.
saying.
Yeah, that's profound. I think that was a beautiful way of describing that. Because we do get pretty caught up in that hell. I really love the idea, and something that I want people to know always is how protected and how loved they are and how much power they have. I mean, the fact we were given dominion at birth, we have dominion. But when we're fooled into believing that we don't, and then we give our power away, is when we can start taking on a lot of things that aren't necessary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Everybody's sovereign. Everybody has a choice. And sometimes those choices don't feel super obvious, but they're still choices.
Or
at
they're
least here.
obvious and they don't
Even
want to
if
do
you're
it.
Right. I saw a post the other day that really it said everybody wants to heal until they have to work. Accountability is really hard. It's really hard to take accountability for some of the crap you've pulled in your life. But once you do, it's very freeing. It's the release of guilt. It's the release of I shoulda, woulda, coulda. It's the release of that and letting yourself sit with where you are instead of being so concerned
And
on where you've been.
it's like letting go of a balloon. It's just an unbelievable release. I like when you see people who are in unhappy marriages and when they finally let go and they finally say, okay, this is dissolving and I'm going to allow it to dissolve instead of beating my head against the wall, and to see how much freer they feel after they do that. And just, oh my God, I've been holding on for dear life because they think either some people think the church is against if they divorce or I made a vow.
There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of shame and a lot of guilt. But something I would really encourage people to remember now, just tiny little backstory. When I met my husband, he was in school to be a preacher. He was in seminary. He's not anymore. But
I did work for the Catholic Church.
Oh, did you? So something he once told me that I thought was really interesting is he said, when you think about the Bible and clergy, you have to remember that the intention behind clergy was not to interpret the Bible at first. The intention behind the clergy was simply to read it to you because
Oh.
people couldn't read. And so you had to have someone to read the material to you, but it was not supposed to be their job to interpret it. But then people started to be able to read, and then the masses were a little less able to be controlled because you don't have this authority figure giving you the knowledge. And so then the structure changed within the church to say, no, I am, especially the Catholic Church, no, I am the one to interpret this for you. You must listen to me, even down to the fact that they say you can't even talk to God. You got to go through Mary or whoever, you know, like what is that about? And Kathleen Madigan is one of my favorite comedians, and she's so hilarious. She talks about it all the time, being Irish Catholic. She said, I was growing up and my friend is telling me she just prayed to Jesus because she lost her keys, and I'm having a stroke thinking, oh my God, you prayed to Jesus for what? You know, like
You can't go to Jesus.
It's really, really funny. Right. She's very funny. She talks about it all the time. So it started out with good intentions, but just like many things made by man, it gets corrupted by greed and control and all the
Unfortunately,
stuff. You know?
Isn't that the truth? So much has been corrupted and bastardized and shifted for political reasons and for power. And so I do absolutely believe that that's shifting. I don't think that it's going to be anytime soon. I don't think tomorrow we're going to wake up and rub roses and bubble gum all over the place. But I do think that there's this huge shift. But I also think that's the reason we're feeling so. I mean, I want to use the word heavy. I believe that the planet is being hit with more light than it ever has, and I think that's why the shit's coming to the surface. It has to come up.
Yes, it's measurable. It's measurable that the planet's been hit with more light than it has in quite a long time. We're in our solar maximum right now, and the amount of sunspots that we get are off the charts. And it's really affecting the planet on a geological level, because it doesn't just affect us, it affects the planet as well. You know, these earthquakes, the tsunamis, the hurricanes, where do you think this is coming from? It's radiation that's being sent to the earth by the sun. This is where this, I mean, climate change is part of it, but everything is magnified. Everything is just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And it really lines up. I don't know a lot about it, so I'm only going to mention it, but I encourage everyone to look it up. But there are cycles called Kali, the yugas, right? And there's this feeling of we are in a Kali Yuga, which is an Indian, I don't know if it's Hindu or what it is, but the Kali Yuga cycle is the cycle of destruction. And there are 4 cycles, right? So we're in the last one before you rebuild and start over, right? And it lines up with everything that's happening. It lines up with the astrology. It lines up with everything across the board. When you zoom out and look at all these different tools, they are all pointing to something happening. But like you, I think it's important to remember this is not a single event. This is an unfolding, an awakening experience for the collective. It's not going to be one event that does this. It's going to be an unfolding over time, because we didn't get here overnight. We're not going to get out of here overnight. Uh-oh.
I keep getting kicked out. Oh no. But I was listening as I could. So Kali Yuga, I did get it pulled up. And so I'll let you finish and I will listen. Oh, you're done?
That's it. I don't know enough about it to speak a whole ton on it. I just recently have started looking into it, but it's a cycle that lines up with how we're seeing things unfold.
Okay, so it's spelled, for anybody who wants to Google this, Kaliuga. It is the 4th and the present age of the world cycle of yugas in Hinduism.
Yes.
Okay. 432,000 years is how long it lasts, and its main period is 360,000.
Which lines up with the Younger Dryas event.
Oh, see, I'm hearing some things. Okay, I'm going to write those down.
So, yeah, Graham Hancock is a fantastic resource to look into about geological things that have happened in our past that he has alternative explanations for. And I like him because he's evidence-based. He's not just throwing it out there and saying, this is what I think. He's pointing to things, and he never says, I love him because he's
Right.
very diplomatic. He never says, "Oh, it's aliens," or "Oh, it's this or that." He says, "I don't think it's what we said it was. I think there's something else." And he kind of leaves it very open to you, but all the evidence that he's presenting to you is, I mean, it leads
Right.
in one direction. But even like in I say it wrong
Go
all the
Becky
time, but Go
template.
Becky
Mary, my,
yeah, so
my
we're
friend Mary on here, if she's still on, she has been studying that.
right. So they are even discovering more stuff there. They're uncovering they just uncovered like a new pillar that has another stable sign on it. And I can't remember exactly what he was saying, but there's something about the cardinal signs that have been uncovered or something like that. There's something going on there,
a lot of, Mary's here. So a lot of change, a lot of, so I'm getting a lot of downloads, so I apologize. So when
no,
I
it's
get weird
okay.
and
It's good.
quiet, it's just I'm starting to hear. I'm just hearing a lot of stuff.
That's good. Throw it out there. I'm excited.
It's like,
I also think it's a really good way to show how people work differently with their intuition, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
so for me, I like to call myself a clarity coach. I'm an energy modulator. So when we start having a conversation, what happens is my energy reaches out and connects to yours and starts doing this. And I start getting information and I will just start talking a stream of thought. I'm not necessarily conscious of where it's coming from, but it's
yeah.
coming from my connection to you and where your interest is. And then for you, you're getting these downloads separately on the side here.
Yeah, I hear. So I'm clairaudient, so I hear a lot. When I do readings with people, what I have recently started doing, and this was guided from my own guides, was from my solar plexus. I imagine myself plugging in. I know that's kind of weird, and it's fairly new for me, but I'm like, okay, I'm gonna plug in today.
I don't
So,
think it's weird.
well, good.
You're just plugging into the power source. That's all.
It's plugging into their power source and to their information. I'm not taking from them. It's to me and through me. So, but most of the time when I get information, I hear it. So I hear it clairaudiently. And sometimes it's weird because then I try to hear, what am I hearing? Why are you talking to me? I'm having a conversation with somebody. Okay.
Right.
So, basically, it was just stuff about what was going on with the world and what's going to be coming up. So I did just make notes. I don't feel like that's something I want to talk about, as we were talking about this earlier, but I did write it down.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very exciting. And I think
Yes,
this is probably a good segue because we should talk about the generational thing because you were kind of excited about that.
I
And
really am.
this is a perfect segue into that, right?
Yes.
So we're talking about going through these changes and in I believe Western culture is the only one that has named their generations. I don't know, but in Western culture, at least, we predicted this and we didn't even know we did it, right?
Yep.
So let's look at the generations. I don't have the specific years, and there are
I do.
overlap between them, right?
Yep.
But so we're going to start with Generation X because that's where I am, right? 1965 to 1980, Generation X. This was the latchkey kids. These were the kids that decided they had had enough. These were the kids that
Carol.
feral kids, the kids who played outside and all this stuff. But when we had children, we decided we wanted better for them. So we birthed the millennials. Millennials are born and they are the first generation with the language of mental health. They have started to bring that into the vernacular. The millennials are the ones who really began to push the idea of, I don't like the way you're talking to me. They've been called very sensitive and this and that. There's nothing wrong with that they don't want
Snowflakes.
to. Right, snowflakes. There's nothing wrong that they don't want to conform to the old way of things. So they started to see that and push that forward. They give rise to the Zoomers, right? The Zoomers are our mobilization force. These are the kids that have decided they're done with the change. They are the ones that are starting to step up, right? There was a recent primary in New York City, and a very young politician won. And right after he won that primary, 1,100 young people across the country signed up for office. This is the mobilization force, the Zoomers. They have had technology in their hands since the day they were born. They've had a global community their entire lives. They are open to the idea of alternative things. They are embracing their creative side. They're learning that ADHD, autism, things are not diseases. They're just different ways of thinking. This is the mobilization force, is the Zoomers. And then right after the Zoomers, we have the alphas. And these alphas are being born different. They cannot take the loud noise. They don't like the loud lights. So what do we do as parents and grandparents? We turn it down. So now we're hearing ourselves, we're hearing things. And as those Zoomers push forward that change, those alphas are going to come right behind them and they're going to anchor in that change. And they are going to be quite literally the start of the next phase.
Yeah.
We named them alpha and did not even know what we were doing. So it goes back to the idea of everything is just connected. And if you can zoom out enough and line things up, there's too much evidence there to argue with yourself on it. It's just too much of it.
Well, it always cracks me up when people complain about the younger generations, because I'm like, well, who raised them? We did. We did. We did that on purpose. We were trying to.
Right, exactly. Well, the thing with Generation X, right? My parents didn't want to hear about my day. My parents were barely home. My parents didn't even know if I was home. My parents never made dinner. I was a latchkey kid. I was responsible for myself. I moved out of the house at 17. I was very independent. And a lot of kids from Generation X are like that, extremely independent. So when we had children, we wanted to fix the bond that we had missed. And so we created children that we were close to and listened to and encouraged them to speak up about their feelings. And a lot of people in older generations don't like that because that's what they did with their kids. And
because they were taught not to. It doesn't feel safe for them.
Right. And it reflects back on them and will make them feel uncomfortable because they're not addressing their own stuff. Right.
Yeah.
But it's the Generation X, at least as far as I can tell, not saying that the other generations weren't important, but the change over, like this idea that it's not one event, it's multiple events in a row that's going to bring this change. I believe it really the turn started with Generation X starting to flip over, the summer of love, right? Like think about all these things that brought these people forward, right?
Yeah.
People conceived in 1969 are Generation X, friends. The summer of love.
That was when I was conceived.
Exactly. And
well, a little earlier, it would have been February,
but even still, that's the year. That's the year. You know what I mean? Like you can see it. You can see all the patterns when you zoom out.
Yeah. So that's why I was so excited we were talking about it. And I watched your little 4-minute presentation on this, or a video on this before we came on live. So I had written down like the reset button with Generation X, which actually makes sense. It's a lost generation too.
Yeah.
Like you said, and I joke about feral, but we really were. I thought it was just me. I thought everybody else had a normal childhood. I thought I was just feral, that my parents were just off doing their own shit, and we fended for ourselves, pretty much raised ourselves.
Right. Well, a lot of our parents were working, it was one of the first generations. Generation X is one of the first generations where the kids didn't have a stay-at-home mother because economy had changed. And so now it was necessary for two income households. So that's why Generation X kind of falls in that crack, because a lot of people who were stay-at-home mothers, previous generations, no longer could afford to do that. And so they had to work, and that took them out of the home, and that's where that reset sort of happens.
Yeah. Yes. I had seen something, and I probably shouldn't even touch on it because I don't have enough information, but it was talking about the kind of the darkness that was behind telling women that they needed to leave the home and go work, and how it was kind of like this, I can't think of the word that I want to use. The only thing that's coming into my head is like a darkness, like masterminding women. Oh, get out. You don't want to be at home. You want to go do this, which causes you to have daycare for your children, which has somebody else raising your children, which makes more kids have to go to school, so isn't that interesting?
It is really interesting. And if you think about it, it might have even started back with the war, World War II, because all the men were shipped over and the women went to work in the factories.
Yeah.
And with going to work in the factories, sometimes for the first time ever, these women had jobs. It gave them a sense of independence. It gave them a sense of sovereignty. And they like that, having their own money, making their own decisions. I mean, if you think about it, it hasn't been that long.
Nope.
My aunt, who is 67-ish years old. Worked as a banker for Bank of America way back when it was Sovereign Bank 150 years ago. And she worked for them forever, right? She could not get a credit card in just her name from the bank she worked for until she was almost 40 years old.
Yeah. Women
And
couldn't
she
vote. Women
for them.
couldn't have, absolutely, you couldn't have your own house.
My mom said she couldn't buy furniture for her house without my dad on the thing. Like this is not that long ago, folks. This is very,
No,
very recently. So
because
again, that idea of you got to zoom out a little bit. You have to give perspective to things. It doesn't feel like things are changing when you're in the middle of it. But when you can back out, you can see all of that.
Yeah, you look back and see, like when I was little, I remember being told women weren't smart enough to do XYZ. Women couldn't do, and I believed it. So I was impressioned with this belief that women weren't capable. Well, I lost that.
Well, women weren't even admitted to medical school until relatively recently. I mean, it hasn't been that long, you know?
No,
So we have to
not at all.
put perspective. When you look at it that way, the last 100 years have been rapid change, rapid societal change. And again, it doesn't feel like it when you're in the middle of it, but it has been tremendous.
The amount of change that we've experienced even in the last 5 years is something that we've never, ever seen in the history of humanity. It has been exponentially. And so it explains why a lot of people are losing their shit right now and getting so angry because we have so much being thrown at us, you know, life and energy and social media and the news, and our little brains are just trying to grasp everything. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's just a lot. And I believe a lot of us are here as little beacons of light too, where we're transmitting energy. How do you feel about that?
I agree. And I agree that many of us are purposely planted in very dark places. And the reason is because you're not here to save them. You're not.
No.
However, you work on yourself, your light gets brighter. And if you're in a dark room full of people, the brighter your light gets, the more they can see that they're sitting in crap, right? The more they start to feel that discomfort around them, and they will make the choices themselves to do this. I try to tell everybody, you don't have to. You are not here to save a single person on this planet except you. But the side effect of you helping yourself is that you help others. That is a side effect.
Dude, when you live your authentic truth, you empower other people to do the same because they see like, oh, she's saying some pretty crazy stuff, but she's okay. You know? Because sometimes people are even afraid to speak up for themselves. I was just catching June. She says, my mom is 94. I love talking with her and what she went through in 1931 up until now. And she has an iPhone too, Snapchat, and knows how to text. Okay, that's
she's
awesome.
doing better than I am.
Dude, I don't know Snapchat. So she's doing
That's awesome. I can't imagine. She must have her perspective on how things have changed must be amazing.
Oh, dude. I bet it is.
Just thinking how time, like what society even looked like in 1931 versus what it looks like now, you know? I mean, I can remember my grandmother, who's been gone for several years, but she immigrated here from Ireland when she was a young woman. She was in her late teens, right? And she came from a very poor part of Ireland, very, very poor when she got here. And when I got married and had kids, I got a minivan that had a TV in the back, you know, one of those fold down TVs. And I'll never forget, she got in the back of my van and she looked at that and she goes, what is that? And I was like, it's a TV, Grandma. She's like, why would you be watching TV and you're going to be driving the car? You got to be paying attention. I'm like, well, it's not for me. It's for the kids. She's like, why would they need to watch TV? And I'm like, because we're on a road trip. And she was like mind blown. How does
I feel like you need to talk in that dialect the rest of the show.
It's hard to keep up. She had such a thick accent. She lived in America for like 60 years and never got rid of it. And I asked her one time and she goes, why would I? I like it. And I was like, but just even something as simple as that to us, we take for granted. She completely was mind blown by the idea that it would work in the car. She had the same microwave my whole life. It was this like old dial microwave.
I can imagine.
I'm sure we were all being irradiated every time
Oh,
she
I
used it, and it
guarantee
took
it. We
just as
still are.
long as the oven, so I'm not even sure, like, why, but, she came from a place where she didn't have anything like that, so to her, America just blew her mind,
Oh, sure. Oh, I have a question from Allison. I'm going to pop it up on the screen. What are your thoughts on star seeds and light workers? I feel like so many millennials are light workers.
So I love that. I think that I don't know definitions, but what I
Okay.
know is that yes, as the successive generations come forward, they come forward more and more awakened, right? Like
Yes.
the alphas are being born awakened and they tend to stay awake for a lot longer. And then each generation back gets more and more awake earlier in their life, right? Generation X, a lot of Generation X, especially women, tend to go through their awakening in their 40s, sometimes in their
Yes.
50s. My daughter is a millennial. She's on the edge of millennial. She's like a zennial. She went through her awakening in her 20s, right? And then the next generation when they're young teenagers, and then the next,
Starting to go.
so yes, I agree with that, and I think it's part of the transition. It's all part of the plan to anchor
Yes.
in the light, to
Yes.
hold that light steady while everything else around you is a hot mess. You have to
Yes.
hold that light so people, when they're confused or concerned, they know where to go, and they can say, oh, look at that light up on the hill, let's go that way. So yes, I
Yes.
absolutely agree that that's a thing. I just don't,
Yeah.
I don't like definitions because I think it makes people get in their head too much.
And they
Um,
can. It,
you know,
Starseed is basically an advanced spiritual being who have incarnated. Um, I think at this stage most are advanced, or they're being woke up so that they can do the work and help others. And like you said, even just to anchor the light, it may not be that they're going to go out and do this for a living, but whether they realize it or not, they are anchoring light.
yes.
And especially if for those people who are feeling really exhausted over especially recently, I have been taking naps. I don't usually do that. The
Yeah.
last couple of days, I have just been like, I'm not kidding, a friggin' zombie. I had to take a nap twice this week.
Yeah. I've been feeling that way. Today has been very odd for me too. Today has been
Oh,
very
has
odd
he?
feeling. But yeah, it's there's a lot happening. The energy can short circuit your system, like we are
Yes.
energetic beings by nature. Our brains are electrical, our hearts are electrical,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
if you are getting a lot of electricity, it can short circuit your system sometimes. And what that looks like for me is I just fold up. I call it a fold up day. I sit
Yeah.
on the couch in my snuggie with my macaroni and cheese and I watch alien TV shows
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
don't think about anything else. That's what I do. But in doing that, that is what self-care looks like for me. That's the best way for me to sort of replenish what I have depleted.
Yeah.
For some
I want to
people,
highlight what you just said for everybody
yeah,
who's listening. That is what self care looks like for her. So make sure you're paying attention to what that looks like for you. It doesn't mean you sit on the couch every day, because at a point that doesn't become self care. But if you have to sit on the couch one day and eat like macaroni and cheese, which is everybody's favorite comfort food, um, do it. That's self care. That's powerful. And you feel better. Yeah. You
yes,
feel
I
like,
always feel
oh, I
better the
just
next day. And, it was a big deal for me because I've always been a very high achiever, type A, firstborn,
do it,
summa
do
cum
it.
laude. Yeah, I've always been a do, do, do. And for me to make the decision, like yesterday, I normally go live and do readings every day on TikTok. And for
Right.
me to make the decision yesterday, I didn't feel like it and
Yeah.
not do it
Empowering.
was very hard because I
Yeah.
had to sidestep the fear that comes around that. What if I go
I
live the next time and nobody's there? What if I don't
Yeah.
make enough money this week? What if, what if, what if?
Yeah.
But there's always going to be a what if. There's
Yeah.
always going to be a what if. You still have to do what works best for you. And if you don't take care of yourself, you are no good to
Yep.
anybody else. Just like when you're on the airplane and they tell you put your mask on first, because if you pass out, you're a hot mess and nobody's going to be able to get any help. So put your mask on, take care of
Yep.
yourself, and give the best version of you to other people. Show them that it's okay to do that. Show them that it's okay to pause for a minute.
Yep. 100%. It is absolutely okay to take care of yourself. We have been infiltrated and indoctrinated to believe that it's selfish to take
Yes.
care of yourself. No, it's not.
Yes.
It's
And
necessary.
that's part of the culture of a consumerist society,
Yeah.
because we're constantly being bombarded with, you need this, you need this, you need the new iPhone, you need the new car. Are you keeping up with the
Yes.
Joneses? Like, this is
Yes.
something that has infiltrated our life. It's in every
Yes.
aspect of us. Don't feel like
Every.
cooking dinner? That's okay. Order DoorDash. It only costs you $10 extra. It's very easy. It's very
Yeah.
hard to stay in your lane and say, no, this is what I need for me. Reiki is not self-care for everybody.
Yeah.
Meditation is not self-care for everybody. Meditation is work for me. It literally is. I have to make myself do it sometimes,
So I
even
hope
though I know.
everybody I've ever said meditate, because I say it daily. Why can't I connect with my guides? You need to meditate. Why is this? Meditate. And I get that
Right.
regularly. I can't. Yes, you can.
But meditation for me is not self-care. It's part of cultivating my system of
Yeah.
communication. It's part of my work, so to speak.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
I go into meditative mode, my guides are excited. They're like, "Are you ready? Let's do it. Let's do it." And I'm like, "No, no, no, I want quiet." And they're like, "What? What? You're here. You're here." Because I have set very strict boundaries with my guides. When I'm ready to work, I have a series of steps I go through, and that invites them
Yeah.
into the space. And they're very much like overexcited children that break all the eggs and get it in the batter. They're just excited to play. So
That's
you have to
awesome.
think about those things.
So that's very much what I do as a medium. I close my door when I'm not working, and then I open my door when I am, and I give them those clues and cues like, okay, come on in.
Right.
The first time I ever did that, I was so terrified that they wouldn't come back.
Yes, me too.
I was afraid of them being there, but then when I realized I could control it, and then I could shut the door, then I was like, I'm afraid to shut the door. So my mind was like kind of a mind fuck.
Yes.
Pardon me for anybody who.
Absolutely, but I had to make the decision to set some rules because I got really tired of being in Walmart and walking past someone and being like, "Why are you so mad?" Or
Yeah,
like
knowing things you
everywhere I
were.
went,
Yeah.
it was just bombarding me, and I don't want to be that person. I don't wanna read people randomly. That's not how I work. I've never worked that way, and I was literally sitting in meditation one day, and I got a download from one of my guides. It's like, you can set rules. Like, it
Yeah.
helps if you tell us
Yeah.
what we want us to do. We're just guessing. And so I did. I set some rules, and it works. And it absolutely works.
Yes.
They are not abandoning you. They're just
No.
learning to communicate with your guides is like learning to speak a twin language that only the two of you understand. And it takes trial and error. You have to try it out. You have to see what works, what doesn't work, look for repeated patterns, quiet your mind. All these things are part of that, but it is an ongoing
Absolutely.
process of learning to communicate. It's not just you get it and you're done. You know,
Yep.
the signs, the visuals I get from my guides rotate. I get different ones. I get
Yes.
new ones, I get old ones, but the meaning is what's important. And it has a lot to do with where your resistance is at the time you're communicating with them.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So, do you notice too, like mine will put shows, and I don't mean shows like TV shows, but like on YouTube, they'll put channels in front of me. They'll put people who are saying something. I'll just have asked a question like, I need to know this. And they will put something in front of me that's answering
Yes.
it for me.
All the
So
time
it's like,
with music, especially because music for me is a
yes,
big piece, is a big thing.
yes.
I will so one of the ways I actually communicate with my guides is if you have an iPhone, if you Shazam a song on your iPhone, it
Do
creates a
not.
playlist.
Okay.
It creates a playlist. So every time I hear a song that has some sort of feels for me, I will Shazam the song and it goes on the playlist. And in the morning, when I'm starting my routine, part of my routine is I open that playlist and I close my eyes and I say, tell me a story. And I hit shuffle. And the first 3 songs that come up usually give me an indication of what kind of day I'm
Oh,
going to have. Is
love
it going to be
it.
busy? What is this? What is this? And I sit with those songs and I sing them and I get into it. And then the next thing I do, that's in the shower, I get out of the shower as I'm blow drying my hair. I'm listening to Abraham Hicks. What
Oh,
message
yes.
does Abraham
Yes.
have for me today? Again, open YouTube, first thing that comes up. I'm not searching. I'm not looking. It's right there. Right.
Yep.
Once I'm done with that, I go in my room here. You can't see it, but I light my
Yeah.
candle over there and I call my guides in. I do my meditation. I pull my cards. I don't write my Schumann report. It is streamed live. Like it is
Yeah.
literally
I
downloaded
freaking love
as
that.
I'm saying it.
I want to
I'm
point out because that kind of touches with what we were saying in the beginning. You believe it, and you receive it.
Yes.
So it's showing up for you because you know it's going to.
Yes.
And the highlight here is that you're trusting it.
Yes, you have to trust it. And someone once said to me that the best way to think of something that you want to manifest, let's just say, is back in the day when someone wrote you a check and you deposited it, there was like a 2-day wait before it was in your
Yes.
account.
Yeah.
They said you want to act like you know you just put that check in the bank, and you
Yes.
know in 2 days every dime is going to be there for you. You should be
Yeah.
excited. You should be like, what am I going to do with it? Oh my gosh, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to buy this and this. You have to tell yourself it's already in the bank, and then it
Yes.
will find its way there. And people want to argue with me on that, but there is no better demonstration than my own life. Like,
Yes.
I am a completely different person than I was 5 years ago. People who haven't seen me in 5 years will see me now and not recognize me because I look
Yeah.
different, I act different, I feel different. Everything is different. I'm
Yeah.
getting people tell me, okay, and I'm not trying to be this person, but people tell me who haven't seen me in 5 years that I look way younger now than I ever
Oh,
did 5 years ago when I was coloring my hair and wearing makeup and doing all this stuff to try to keep up with things. I stopped doing
yeah.
all that stuff, and I get so many more people saying, "My God, you look so much younger. You look this and that. What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm just deciding to be happy." You know?
I love that. And what a beautiful example that is for people too. It's an
Yeah.
amazing example.
If you and the thing is, if you like coloring your hair, absolutely you should do it. Absolutely you should. If you
Just did
feel good,
today.
right? If that helps you feel good, absolutely you should. I absolutely hated coloring my hair. It drove me insane. I didn't want to do it, but I was doing it because obviously I've got a lot of wisdom, right? And so I was
Well, that's
constantly trying to cover that up because I thought it aged me. I hated coloring my hair because I hate the smell and the feel and the cost and all this stuff. COVID hit was
all the
very
cost.
convenient.
Oh
COVID
boy.
was very convenient. I grew out my bangs, I grew out my hair, I quit wearing makeup, I quit eating red meat. I did a lot of stuff during COVID.
Oh my God. So you and I kind of did an absolute flip flop on that. So I didn't used to dye my hair. I could care less. My hair was my hair. I never used to have my nails done. I mean, most of the things, but as I started to grow in my mediumship and my psychic abilities, things just started changing. I was like, oh, I think I want to try something new with my hair today. So I mean, I still have the
Yes.
freaking brown stuff, but I noticed a change in that area where I do things too differently as well, but it kind of went in a different way for me. I'm still not a prima donna, and no offense to anybody who is. So if you like that, that's great. Fruity. I still have horses, I still ride, I'm still usually come in all smelly and stinky and dirty. Um so
But you know what? I think it's important for people to realize that there is no wrong in or right in spirituality. It's individual.
yeah.
So it's what feels good for you. And you shouldn't be measuring how good it feels for you based on someone else's reaction to you,
Yeah.
because
And
their reaction to you has everything to do with them and nothing
yeah,
to do
and
with you.
nothing to do with you. And I like that we do it in different ways, but we still come to meet in the middle so people can see that not everybody is the same, and we can reach different people because of our differences.
Yes, and that's important. One of my theories, the reason why I think we have so many different spiritual teachers is because there are so many different kinds of people. And
Yes.
for me, I'm a perfect example. You cannot give me an Eckhart Tolle book and expect me to understand what in the hell this man is saying. Because to me, he sounds like he's speaking some foreign Martian language. I'm like, what? He someone gave me his book. Now I understand he has a lot of wisdom and a lot of knowledge. I absolutely have tons of respect for him, but the
Yes.
way he writes is
Yeah.
very esoteric in nature. I
Yeah.
am a scientist. You have
Yeah.
got to speak to me in a language that I understand. And I tried reading tons of books by authors like that and could not understand anything. I bought one book by David Morehouse,
Yeah.
Understood Manifestation in 3 pages, because he explained
Really?
it in the language I understand, which is science. He said,
Yeah.
"This is what frequency is. This is what resonance is. This is what manifestation is." And I'm like, "Well, duh, that makes
Yeah.
sense," like stuff like that. But you have to
Um,
find the person that speaks the language you understand. And if you
yes.
can't, create it. Like I did. Like I wrote that book because I couldn't find the answers I was looking for. Your discovery of those answers are part of your journey. And if you found a hole in the
Yeah.
knowledge, someone else found that hole and they will benefit from that. That's the side
Yes.
effect of you figuring it out for yourself.
Yes. And when those opportunities present themselves, grab them, because if you don't, somebody else will.
Yes.
So that's how that works. That energy just goes to visit the next person, if you will. Okay.
Yes.
So you have
Michael
to grab it.
Jackson used to say that ideas were living things
Well,
and that they come to visit. And if you're not strong enough, I mean, creatively, we're not talking about any of his other stuff, but with his
yeah,
music, that if you don't take that idea, it will go to somebody else. And if you
yeah,
look at society, look at the rash of movies that come out. We have clumps of movies that come out with the same
yes,
themes all the time.
literally, yes,
Clumps, because
literally,
ideas are living things and it drops down, and whomever is open to that is going to pick up on that, and their interpretation of that idea is what we get.
100%. So for those of you who are manifesting and you're like, I don't get any signs, yeah, you do. You get them all the time.
They're
Grab,
everywhere. You just
grab
don't
them.
see them, or you're
Yeah,
not paying attention, or you're talking yourself out of it, which is something that
that
most people do.
dude, that is the biggest thing I see with my clients is they convince themselves they made it up. If they get a sign or a message, or not all, but it's
Well,
like,
because what happens is you feel the excitement in the moment. That's your
yes,
higher self so excited, and then you get space and your ego starts to jump forward and
yes.
it starts to go, well, maybe that's not really what happened. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe this, maybe that. And your ego is trying its best to do its job, which is to protect you, right? So it
Yeah,
tells you these things because the fear is you tell someone else about this, you're going to be judged. That's hurtful, right? So
yes,
your ego will come forward and try to do its natural job and protect
hmm,
you by planting these doubts in your brain. But you
yes,
have to recognize and tell your ego, no, 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 I'm not a caveman in the forest running from a bear. I'm good.
yeah,
I got this, you know. But your ego
yes.
is not your enemy. It's really not. It's just the mama
Thank
bear
you.
part of you.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because I belong in some different esoteric groups where they talk about the destruction of ego and we have to kill ego. I'm like, I don't think we need to do
There's
that.
no
I
balance to
think
that.
it
There's no
needs to be
balance to
there.
that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that
Balance
because
is allowing in the higher self and balancing it with the physical self. You are here
yes,
to have a physical life. The purpose of life is
part of being
life.
human.
It's life, right? And I mean, I haven't seen the movie yet, but it's all over the internet where Superman, there's a scene where he's yelling at Lex Luthor and he's talking about how every day he gets up when he's scared, when he's worried, and he loves and he hurts. And that's the best part of him. And that's the human part. And
Yes.
when he says that in the film, man, tears running down my face. I was like, oh my God, because he's right. He's
Oh,
right.
it's
The
true.
best
Yeah,
parts of him are human, and that's
yeah,
us. You
yeah.
came here to have a human experience. You didn't come here to save the world. You didn't come here to do anything like that. You came here to rediscover yourself through the contrast that is presented in your life and the choices that you make, because your etheric self lives in a place that has no passage of time. Without
Yes.
passage of time, there can be no change, y'all. So you send down an incarnation into a place that has passage of time. And because quantum entanglement works, everything you experience, they experience, and they expand the same time you do.
Yep.
But because quantum entanglement works, they can send you information just like you send them information. It's a two-way street.
I'm just reading. Rita says, I don't know what she's got here. Rita, we did an exercise years ago where we looked at flyers to tech. If you look at each item, they were not around 5 years ago. It was determined aging is not the number, but setting yourself in one era and not accepting new things.
I can see that. The mind is a very powerful thing. And
Yes,
if
it
you
is.
tell yourself, I'm getting older, I'm getting older, I'm getting older, then you're going to manifest that you're getting older physically. Absolutely.
Oh, okay. Here's another one. I have been feeling very emotional and teary eyed. I can't figure out if I need to open up to someone about our past. I am very drained.
So, with something like this, what I tend to tell people is write yourself a letter and be completely honest and open and say everything you want to say in that letter and see what comes out. Because if you need to talk to somebody about something, it'll come out in there. but you have to give yourself permission to be sad. Give yourself you're not intended to not feel your emotions. They're purposeful. They have a
Exactly.
purpose in your life. So feel the sadness. Don't push it away. Sit with it and feel it and put words to it. Articulate it. Get it out of your system. And then sometimes giving you space from that will give you clarity. You can read it back to yourself and go, oh, I see where this is coming from. It's hard to see how many trees are in the forest when you're in the middle of the forest. You got to zoom out a little bit.
Yep, step back a little bit. And you have to feel it to heal it. It's not magical. When another term that drives me crazy is when people say get over it or let it go.
Right. Well,
When you're
eventually let
deep
it
in
go.
emotional pain and trauma, you can't let it go because you don't even know what letting it go looks like. So you
Right.
have to sit with it.
Well, and going back to the idea that everything is energy, right? So if you think about it this way, emotion, energy in motion, emotion.
Yes.
Okay. So you are intended to feel the emotion, and it's supposed to tell you or be a guide point on where you are in regards to what you are moving towards, your alignment. So you feel the emotion, you feel joy. Great. I'm in alignment. Feel all the joy and it leaves. You feel the sadness. Okay, I feel sadness. I'm not in alignment. That's supposed to be our cue to stop and look around and go, okay, where is this coming from? You're supposed to use it to feel what's going on. But what we as humanity tend to do is we feel an emotion we don't like and we say, no, 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 I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to feel this. And we grab it and we squash it and we squeeze it
Squish
down.
it.
It still exists. It doesn't disappear. And we are energetic beings. It goes in your body, right? So if you think of the picture of an atom that you saw in elementary school, you got a nucleus with electrons running around.
Yep.
What do you think is in that space between the nucleus and the electrons, friends? That's energy, right? So you start squashing down this feeling of guilt, right? And like attracts like. So the next time you have an experience that you feel guilt, you add more to it, and then you add more to it. And what happens over time, that atom gets heavy, then the cell that the atom is in gets heavy, then the organ that the cell is in gets heavy, and then you get dis-ease. By the time you have a physical dis-ease manifesting in your body, it is so energetically out of alignment that energy alone is not often going to fix it. It has to come from a 360-degree angle here, and physical health. And that's how you work on that. And people all the time will tell me, well, you don't know. Yes, I do. Because before my awakening, I was on 5 medications every day. That was my breakfast. 5 medications. Anxiety, depression, OCD. I take 1 medication now, and only because I have to, because I had thyroid cancer and I don't have a thyroid. So if I don't take this, I'll go into a coma. That's
Can I
the
ask
only
you about that?
Yeah.
When you developed the thyroid cancer, were you at a place in your life where you weren't speaking your truth, or you weren't speaking up, or you had a really hard time with
My whole
other
life. My
I
entire
want to
life.
highlight that for people too. I would say everybody that I know who's had thyroid cancer has had that issue, and that's why I always fucking tell people you have to speak your truth.
You do.
Not just speaking your truth, it's you also have to be able to digest other people's, and that comes through the throat.
Yes.
So because
Absolutely.
it's a two-way. So so
For
I would
me,
suspect you've done some work there.
oh yeah. Well, so for me, a lot of it had to do with a feeling of not being heard, right? I always felt like my voice fell on deaf ears, and that happened in multiple aspects of my life. So I also had endometriosis really, really badly. It literally
Oh
almost killed
Lord,
me. Okay? But for most
that's
of my
brutal
life,
too.
every time I went to a doctor, they didn't believe me. Every time. But they would tell me I was making it up, that I was exaggerating, this, that. It ended up to the point where I got so ill from this. I lost 100 pounds in 3 months and had to have emergency surgery to get rid of this. And when the doctor did the surgery, this was a new doctor I went to. She came out, and my husband, I love my husband. I've been married to him for 27 years, but he never believed me because the doctors were telling him that I was making this up. She was so angry about this that she came out after surgery and sat down with him and made him look at the photos from my surgery and made him listen to her say, do you understand what she has been walking around with for the last 25 years? and made him sit there. And he told me, he goes, I will never doubt you again. But that was a big part of it because I grew up in a household with parents who were very busy. I had an abusive alcoholic father. I never had a voice.
Yeah.
So thyroid cancer, energetically speaking, makes perfect sense. It was also not long after the thyroid cancer that I got the blood clot disorder, like a year. And then right after that, I had another step. And all of my awakening steps have come through medicine, right? Think about that.
Yeah.
Even from the
Yeah.
endometriosis through here. And I was in medicine because that's the language my soul spoke.
Yes.
I had to go through something that I had faith in order to see that, because I had resistance to everything else. As a matter of fact, in my undergraduate studies, I got an undergraduate degree in psychology. The capstone project for my psychology degree was to write a paper about a fringe religion. I wrote a paper about Doreen Virtue. And for all you new people in here who don't know who she is, she was a big deal back in the day.
She was a big deal.
Doreen Virtue was a big deal back in the day. And I wrote a paper
in this
and
world.
graduated college writing a paper about how crazy she was. Tore her apart in that paper. Fast forward 20 some odd years later, I'm opening a physical wellness center. A friend walks in with a stack of books he wants to donate to the library, and every one of those books was a Doreen Virtue book. And he had no idea I'd written that paper. That is your higher self going, hey, you could have avoided all of this if you would have just paid attention to this 20 years ago. You know?
It's like you were on the right track. We were trying to tell you, Doreen Virtue, you might have been different.
And I think we have a lot of moments like that in our lives where we have the opportunity to wake up and we make choices that move us away from that. And that's why for a lot of us, the awakening can be so disruptive, because we've had opportunities before we got so grounded in what we believed in. We had opportunities,
so
many. There, I can look back in my life and see hundreds of times that I could have chosen to embrace something different or to be more open-minded or whatever, and actively chose not to.
Sometimes it takes something very traumatic to shift you, to make the changes in your life, to get you to where you needed to be. And that's part of your soul contract too. And I think that's part of what our guides can do for us, is to kind of remember, and it's going to get bigger. And I don't say that to scare anybody, but because there are a lot of things we're here to learn and to understand. Okay, I want to do another question, if that's okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Rita says, I was told if you are angry, write it down, tear it up, put it in the garbage. It's a way of addressing your anger and moving through it. I hope it helps with some things you can't let go. I found it helps. I think that's
that can be a very powerful thing. It also can be really powerful if you know you need to have a conversation with someone that's going to be difficult. Write it down and say it out loud to yourself first. You hear yourself and you'll change things. And you also walk into the conversation prepared, and you won't be caught off guard.
And what I just was hearing when you were talking was, you can do that looking in the mirror too. You can look at yourself and say it, and then see how you feel about how it's coming out of your mouth. Okay. I wanted. I was reading. What are your thoughts on grief and trauma coming in waves and spiritual ancestral healing point of view, instead of just getting over it? If you have to continue working on it as it comes, you do. But is there a point where it will feel healed even when it stopped? So is there more on here?
Even when let's see. Even if it keeps coming in waves, people tend to just say it gets easier, but I'm searching for something deeper, I suppose. So Ryan, if you're talking about grief over the loss of a physical person, my personal opinion is no, I don't think you ever get over grief. I think grief changes shape with you. And I think what grief is representative of is the vacuum that person left in your life. And you can choose how you refill that vacuum, because it's always going to be there, right? But grief is something that I have found in my own experience and working with clients. It's not something that happens overnight. It goes in stages, and every single one of those stages are 100% valid. And the best thing you can do for yourself is allow yourself to feel angry when you're angry. Go outside and scream at God if you need to. He doesn't mind.
Scream a freaking pillow.
A pillow. Go to a rage room. Do whatever you need to do. And if you feel really, really sad, cry about it. Call your friend and say, I just need 8 minutes of your time, because in 8 minutes, if you can sit with somebody for 8 minutes, they can unburden themselves to the point of feeling better. You don't have to talk. You don't have to offer a solution, but get it out of your system. But the grief is the result of the vacuum that is created from when that person is gone. And it's always going to be there, but it changes shape as you grow, because the more you start to work with them in their spiritual form, however that looks, right? Like the idea of remembering that in their physical life, they had a lot of contrast and a lot of things going on. Like with my dad, I have a better relationship with my father now than I ever had when he was alive, because he was an alcoholic and he was full of all these issues. He does not have that now. So my communication with him is different. And so I still am sad I don't have him here with me physically, but I get comfort from the idea of knowing that I can reach out to him at any time. And that is not something that has come easy, and it's not something that happened overnight. My dad's been gone for almost 5 years. So it's something that just grows with you. But no, I don't think it's something you just get
You do
over.
not. I will double down on that with you. You do not just get over it. That is impossible, because they were a huge part of your life. And when there is a lot of trauma attached to the grief, the person who passed, maybe there was a lot of trauma involved and there was a lot of relationship issues, then not only do you lose a part of, you lose them when they pass the physical, but you also lose an aspect of who you are. So I was his daughter, I was his son, I was her mom, whatever that is. You lose that aspect of who you are. And so you're basically recalibrating everything you ever freaking knew, and you have to start again. You're literally rebuilding
Yes.
your life, and it feels like from scratch. And as you go through that, you may lose people, you may gain, and I don't mean lose physically as in they'll pass away, but I mean
Right.
you may grow apart.
Well, grief makes people
Yes, it does.
uncomfortable
Stinky
because
cat,
they don't
don't
know
know
what
what
to
to do with
say.
that person. Ooh, yeah.
Right. Right. I have a friend who's literally going through something very difficult right now, and he called me today, and he actually texted me. And this is a guy,
Yeah,
he's a
do.
man's man.
Yeah.
He's from New
Oh,
Jersey. He's from New
okay.
Jersey. He's a tough guy. And he actually texted me and he said, I need 8 minutes. And that's a very
Yes.
profound call. So I called him, and that whole conversation, I said almost nothing, but he was able to feel safe in expressing what he needed to say, because I, as a woman, will never understand what it feels like to be a man. But I do understand that men have a tremendous amount of pressure on them to mask
Yes.
their emotions, because they're
Yes.
supposed to just get over it and get through it. And he needed somewhere to be soft and to feel what he's feeling. And sometimes that's the best thing you can do for somebody. They don't know, they already know that there's nothing you can
Yep.
do to make it better. They already know that. You don't
Yep.
have to say that. They already know. Just sit there. Just
You
sit
just have
there.
8
8
minutes. You
minutes. That's
just
all it
have to,
takes.
that's holding space. That's holding space,
Mhm.
just being there and letting somebody be who they need to be. That is a trauma wound, that men not being able to speak their emotions, because, and women do this too, but typically, and especially our generation, you were told, boys don't cry, boys don't feel that. Stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about, kind of energy.
Right.
So we've made our men emotionally unavailable. And then the women are like, well, why
Right.
can't you tell me how you feel? Because they've been told not to.
Right. Because they don't have the language.
Yeah.
They don't have the language. They
So
don't know how. And this part of the purpose of the re-rising of the divine feminine is to give back our brothers part of their heart, because it feels like they had to leave it at the door. And that's not a complete person. They need to be allowed to feel how they feel. And the generations that are coming up now,
that's where I was
alphas
going.
and
You read my
betas,
mind.
are very open to
Yeah.
talking about how
They're
they
able
feel, and
to.
very open to
And as
creating.
much as that
Yeah,
pisses
because
off
they have the
the rough
language.
and tough people, it is actually a beautiful thing that we have these kids that do come in and they are able to communicate, because that's when you get shit solved, is when you can talk and you can hear each
Yes.
other. Not just so you can do all the talking, but when you guys can work together. And
Yes, perspective changes lives.
that's pretty powerful. Oh, Ryan said thank you. Oh, but you're welcome. You're welcome. Okay. don't see any other questions. Hi, Cindy.
Well, Stacy says, "How can we start to do this and transform
Oh,
ourselves and lives?" So I'm not sure if you're speaking specifically about grief, but the thing I tell everybody when they say, "What's my one thing I tell people to do?" is you got to stop worrying about it. You got to stop. You got to stop worrying about it because no amount of worry is going to change anything, and then you're just punishing yourself twice.
beat it.
So mindfully plan, right? Mindfully plan. Be aware of your life, but stop focusing on all that stuff that makes you feel out of control because there is literally nothing you can do. What you can do is be the alternative. Be the alternative. That's how you start. If you're in a community where there's so much anger and frustration, walk around like a beaming piece of sunlight. You have to be the alternative. And that is a choice that you make every single day, all day long. It is not something that just snaps into place and it's just good and you're ascended and you're
No,
saved and everything's wonderful.
that's life.
Awakening is Awakening is a verb, it's not a noun, and you're going to continue to awaken as long as you're alive
Yes.
on this planet. So stop looking at it as a destination. It's part of the journey. It's learning to stop and smell the flowers. It's learning to see the bees and not be afraid of them. It's learning to hear the birds and the frogs and all that stuff.
Yep.
Even though that's the thing, even though I'm
Yep.
still going to celebrate this. The reason I go outside every single day when I make my video, no matter how cold it is, no matter how rainy it is because I want to start my day every single day grateful for this planet that I stand on. And that's the easiest way for me to do that because that sets the tone for my
Yes, setting
entire
your
day.
intention. That's beautiful. What you're saying kind of speaks to what Ryan's question was about that point of it being healing, is it is an ongoing process. And every day you have to choose. One of the things Derek, my son, told me when he passed was, Mom, you're focusing on my passing instead of my life. And he said, if you could
Right.
start focusing on the beautiful things, the beautiful experiences, it will help you shift that. So I had to literally start thinking about those things. And it was a conscious effort that I had to make. It didn't just wake up magically one day and it was gone. Because still to this day, I have days.
Right. Yeah. And that's part of the human experience is you're going to have
Yeah.
difficult days. But that's part of a feeling. That's part of being connected to your life. That's part of embracing your
Yeah. And
life,
that's why I think gratitude and being thankful, even thankful for the people in our lives who are stinkers or assholes. We'll just say it.
Yes. Yes, because if you don't know what you don't like, you don't know what you do like.
Thank you.
And you have to have the
Yeah.
contrast.
Contrast is a powerful word. I love that word. Because that's exactly what it is. You know what you don't like because I like this over here, so I'm going to move away from that bullshit. And you just keep that over there.
Yeah, and I wanna give everybody a suggestion. There's a song, it's called, "Enjoy the Ride," and it's by an artist named Abel
Oh,
Hart, and if you are feeling funky, if your day is starting off on the wrong foot, I would encourage everyone to go and
is it
just
on
play the
YouTube?
song and give yourself it's on Apple Music, it's on all kinds of stuff. His name is Abel Hart, and it's, called "Enjoy the Ride."
Oh, there it is. Hold on. I'll share a link. Hold on just a sec.
Yeah.
Oh, are you playing it? Yep.
I am. This is how it starts out.
I'm sharing a link.
It'll start your day off in a good way. But he talks a lot about being grateful for the little
Oh,
things in that song.
Ryan. I hear you, Melissa. He's laughing. Even though through the shadows there is so much more light to see. Oh, there is, sweetheart. There is, but it takes time.
Right, but without darkness, there is no light. There has to be
Yep.
contrast.
Sometimes that contrast shows up. Oh, I don't want to do that. I was gonna here, get off of there. It's telling me to block. I don't want to block him. Um, um, I'll do this. Okay.
Just Abel Hart as an artist in general, he is incredibly positive in his messages, and has changed his life through his music. So just in general, he's fantastic to follow.
I'm definitely gonna, we'll just go follow him right now. Subscribe. Done. And I will listen to him. I will listen to him tonight and then in the morning. Okay. All right, my dear.
Yeah.
So we're almost at 2 hours. We're getting pushing it.
Yeah, I was just about to say it's
Oh
almost
my
9
Lord, are
o'clock
you
here.
I haven't even had dinner. Are you exhausted?
I'm not exhausted, but I am getting to the point where I'm getting
Okay.
tired. But this was really fun. I would love to do this
Yay!
again. I would be open to the idea of doing this
Oh,
once a month and just
I would
bringing
love
people
it.
in or whatever you want to
I
do. We can talk about that because I'm an endless sea of information, and the more we
I
talk, the
love
more I
this.
get.
And I
You
would
know,
be thrilled to do this monthly. I think it would be good.
awesome.
I
That
feel
works for
like
me.
we've got good feedback. I'll go over it, any feedback that I get, and I'll share that with you and I'll email you.
Yeah, and bring your
Yes.
questions. Bring your questions. What is manifestation? I have a great understanding of explaining things in a way that can be relatable. That's part of my gift
Yeah.
is perspective. It was one of the greatest parts of being a teacher is that I was able to help my students see perspective and find the answer on their own, and that is my personal
Yeah.
favorite feeling is when I'm sitting across from someone and I'm talking to them and they have that look on their face and they're thinking and the minute
Yeah,
they get it, their eyes light up. That
that
is
is
empowerment.
incredible.
That is
Yeah.
empowerment. And that's my favorite feeling in the whole world.
Well, we're getting great feedback so far. Yes, this was great. Thank you. Rochelle says, I love this so much. Two beautiful, powerful women. I think I flip flop those words. Do you do that too? Do you read words?
That's okay.
I read freaking backwards sometimes, or I see words that aren't there.
I I do, or I read numbers weird sometimes, and I switch up acronyms a lot. Like I recorded a podcast interview the other day with this guy named Raymond Christian, who's an AI developer. It's actually a
Oh,
fascinating episode because he's talking about how much AI
yes.
has changed and that sort of stuff. And I kept wanting to say non-human intelligence, but I kept saying NIH, and he's like, "What's NIH?" And I'm like, non-human intelligence? He goes, "You mean NHI?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah,
That's one.
NHI, not the National Institutes of Health." It's
That's awesome. Oh, Lord. Well, we're human, so there's that.
yeah, and I also another quirk of mine is I can't remember people's
Thank
names.
you.
You can tell me 700 times what your name is, and I am not gonna remember it. I was on a call with a client, I think it was yesterday, and she was like, "Oh, I'm so excited that you know Melissa," and I'm like, "Who?" And she's like, "Melissa, Melissa
I
Henyan,"
did.
and I'm like, I don't think I know who that is," and she's like, "You're doing a live with her?" I go, "Oh, yes! Sorry, I just couldn't remember the name." Like, I'm just I for whatever reason, I just cannot
No, it's
remember the
okay.
names. And someone once said to me, a fellow psychic once said to me, she goes, "It's because you don't associate them with their human form. You associate them with their energy. I will recognize your energy,
Yeah.
but I won't know
I'm
your
like
name."
that with horses. I usually don't remember the rider, but I'll remember the horse. It's, but there's
Right.
also like, and I know we got to go, but like when I do readings and somebody will see me, most see me out and about and they'll come up and say and start talking to me and I will kind of I don't remember. Or they'll say, remember when you told me this? And
Yes.
that because it's not my information is where I go with that because it's not it came through me, but it's not
Yes. 100%. When I am in a session with a client or when I'm reading for someone, I tell people it's like being a
yeah,
straw. I am not retaining anything I
yeah,
am telling you. It is literally streaming
yeah,
live to you as I am
yeah.
receiving it. And that's why my conversations move in circles sometimes because I'm trying to translate it
Yes,
as quickly as
yes.
I can get it. Once I disconnect from that
It's gone.
conversation,
Yeah,
I have no idea what
yeah.
we talked about.
Yeah, that's funny. I call that
It
squirrel on crack because it comes so fast and I'm trying to get it out of my mouth before I forget it. And so sometimes
Yep.
I feel kind of sorry sometimes for my clients because they're like, what the shit's happening?
Right. So so what I started doing with my private clients is to fix that, because it can be a lot of information
Yes.
all at once. Because once I start getting in my channel, I can't slow that down. And sometimes I go really fast because I'm trying to get
Yes.
everything. And people were, they're getting lost in the message. So what I started doing is, when I have a private session with someone, I actually
Yes.
record it, and then I take that recording and I give them a summary so that I can remember, they can remember, and then I keep that summary. So if I have a repeat client, I can go back and say, okay, this is what we
Oh,
talked about last time. Just sort of
that's
refresh
smart.
myself. Otherwise, I will have
Yeah,
zero
like, oh,
idea of what we
I
talked
don't
about.
usually do a summary. I just always go into each one fresh. So I might have to borrow
Well,
that.
yeah, you should. And there's this app. It's called Fathom, Fathom. It is free.
Oh, we
It's
like
a
free.
free note taker that you can add it. If you do Zoom
Yeah.
sessions with people, you can add it free to your Zoom session, and it'll give you bullet points, a
Is
transcript, a
that what you
summary,
used the
whatever
other
you want.
day?
It just spits it right out.
Oh, sweet. Okay,
Yes.
I'll look that up. Because I got a little
And
thing
then
too. I was like, oh,
yes, and when you send that to them, they can click that link and they can watch the video, or they can see the
awesome.
whatever, and it's
We like
free.
free. Awesome.
I mean, there are paid versions, but I
Yeah,
don't use it, so.
I get that. When you have your own business, it's like nickel and dime. It's like, oh my God, I gotta pay for that. I
It
know.
really is, yeah.
We should have a whole session on that.
I told somebody, I go, "The business,
Oh,
that's the dirt under the fingernails when it
it
comes to
really is.
spirituality."
Because
That's
a lot
the
of people don't realize that there's so much that goes on behind the scenes, and it is a lot of work.
yeah, right, and when someone is it's also an energy exchange. There's a lot of work it is very energetically consuming
Yes.
for me to do readings for
Yeah.
people and stuff, and so I need to be able to
Yeah.
compensate myself in some way, and for me,
Yeah.
that's monetary right
Well,
now. I'd love to be in a world that monetary reason
yeah,
wasn't
but we're not.
necessary, but
We're
unfortunately for
not.
us,
Yep.
currently, it is
Yep.
not.
And that's very true. I get asked that quite a bit. I'll have people send me emails. Why do you charge if you're real? Well, because I'm alive and I'm breathing and I have bills.
Well, do you go to your barber and ask them, "Why do you charge me to cut my
Yeah,
hair if you're
there's
real?"
just such this. We should make that for another conversation, but the stigma about mediums and
Yeah.
spiritual workers that they shouldn't charge.
Why?
I
That
know.
is
I
so
think so
silly to
too.
me. There's no other service that people give
I
that we
know,
don't
right?
expect
I
them to
know, right?
charge for.
It's
Yeah. I mean, we are basically therapists rolled up in a form of a pastor and a counselor and a friend and all this, and we're using all of those
tools.
things together
Yeah,
to give you tools to
yeah.
help you help yourself. Just you go to a therapist, you pay
Oh,
several
geez.
$100s an hour,
Yeah.
so you're getting a deal, friend. You know?
Touche. Oh, well, looks. I'm excited. I do want to do this again. I will definitely. We'll talk. I do want to throw her up here on the screen. So I grew up with Tracy. She's a nurse as well. We were feral for two. Her and I snuck out some windows together in our feralness.
Yeah. Yeah, I did a lot of stuff in my feralness that if I ever found my
Oh,
kids doing,
I
I'd be
know.
like, "What?" But you know what, though? I made a conscious choice when I had children that I always wanted to be the first
Yeah.
call. I don't want them to ever be afraid to call me. I don't want them to ever be worried. And so I really consciously cultivated an environment where I encouraged them to speak up, where I encouraged them to not be
Yeah.
afraid to call me. And it has been so wonderful because my kids are incredibly independent. My daughter is very on her own, doing her thing, successful, loving her life. My son is just about
Oh
to go
my
off to
gosh.
college, even
Yes.
with autism. He has autism. And because I have fostered that space of it's not weird to
Right.
have autism, he doesn't
Yeah.
feel weird. So he's going off to school without
Oh, I
any
love that.
concerns, and it has been such a wonderful place. But you have to give them permission to
Yeah.
mess up. You have to give them permission to
Yeah.
make mistakes. And remember, you did too. you know?
We totally do. And I think we're moving that direction. And I think those of us who, struggle with that are learning that and we'll be able to help our grands with that. So,
Right. And what's that phrase? It's a very famous phrase. It says something to the effect of to err is human, to forgive is divine.
dude. And forgiveness is not about the person you're forgiving. It is about letting go of the burden you're carrying.
Yes. And let me tell you, as someone who has a degree in psychology, closure is not real.
Thank you.
Not. Because let me tell you why.
I agree.
Because if someone hurt you, let's just say someone hurt you. If they tell you, you're right, it's all my fault, I did it, everything you think, it is not going to make you feel better.
You still got the
It does
wound.
not change what happened. You still have the wound. And if they say, you're wrong, I didn't do that, and they shirk responsibility, now you feel worse. There is no good answer to that. The answer to that is deciding to be okay with what happened, no matter what that looks like, not excusing it, not saying it was okay, but saying, I'm going to be okay. And then you take the next step, whatever that looks like.
Because we can't control what other people do. We can only control how we respond and receive the information. Yes. Okay. On that note. That was fun.
But if anybody wants to find me, I do have a lovely website, consciouslyerin.com. I am the same on every single platform. Just please be mindful if you're on TikTok.
Yes.
There are hundreds of scam accounts that steal my information and they will message you and say they're me. It's not. I do not know a single reputable reader who will coldly reach out to someone and say, I felt your energy from across the universe. First of all, that is a violation of my privacy.
Right.
No, thank you. I will always ask you for permission before I tap into your energy because it is yours. And that it's always a generic message. So please just double check yourself. Okay. You can find me on Patreon. I do a written version of the Schumann report every day on there. That's a little more expanded than the video. Every Wednesday, I release a new article connecting current scientific discoveries and spirituality. And the articles range from discoveries of things under the ocean to quantum physics. They're all over the place. I have classes and all kinds of stuff. So check it out.
Okay. I think I put your website, consciousllyerin.com.
Yeah, you did.
So,
I see it.
Okay. How much fun was that? I am looking
It was so
forward to
fun.
doing it again.
Me too. I'm excited about it, and tell people about it. Bring your questions. Ask me. You got us here. Get us going. Get the, bring the juices. Get the juices flowing. You want to know about manifestation? Let's break it down. You want to know about this? Let's break it down. You want to talk about law of attraction? Let's do it. You want to talk about quantum mechanics? I'm a fan,
I do love some quantum mechanics, so we might have to discuss that too. I am a huge Albert Einstein. I have channeled him and I've had things come out of my mouth that are not mine because I don't feel like I'm that intelligent. So I'm like, holy crap. So definitely would like.
Oh, you can't really see it, but this picture, can you see who that is?
Oh my God, I have one right here too. Oh, mine is here, but it's behind my oracle cards. But
he's one of my heroes. I have a beautiful painting of him.
We have so much in common.
I'm so glad I got to be here. Thank you. I'm going to say it wrong.
Arva, you said it right.
Thank you. All right. All right. Well, until we meet again, friends, have a wonderful evening. Take care of yourself. Do what you need to do. Enjoy your ice cream.
Take care of you.
Enjoy your life. Enjoy your night. All right, everybody. Have a great